Is Victor Wembanyama, even with the minutes restriction, a lock for Rookie of the Year? Let's talk about it. Listen, if you're new to the channel, this is your boy P.kidd. This is P.kidd Talks NBA. Even though I have my Bears hat on, don't worry about it. It's football. It's football Monday. But let's get into the topic. Realistically, Victor Wembanyama has put up a masterclass on how to go off with no minutes restriction. I mean, my man is having the time of his life, even with this minute restriction, based off the ankle injury he had about a month ago. But when you look at it and you look at the splits and things of that nature, Victor is averaging about 19.4 points, 10 rebounds, 3 assists over the last 10. But overall, it's about 1 for the season. And when you really look at what he's doing and how he's able to do it, all of these points and all of these things that he's putting up don't really equate to wins. They're 7-31. Now, that is not a true indictment on him. Because, again, he can only play with who he's there with. But one would assume that everyone thought that the Spurs would have a better record. Now, there are two things that kind of hurt Victor when it comes to this particular conversation. One, availability. While it's only been about 5 games, and again, he is playing on a minutes restriction, to qualify for some of these awards, you have to be available for 65 or more games out of an 82-game season. Because we're not even at the halfway mark yet, we're a few games under the halfway mark of the season, you could start to ask the question, is he going to be available for the next 12, for the next half of the season, or is it possible that he could miss another 12 games? Because if he does, he might be ruled ineligible, despite the fact that he's put up good production and good numbers. Now, when you ask that question, you always have to consider, well, who else is there to even take that away from him? Who is there to even have the conversation of who can be a Rookie of the Year candidate? And the first person that came to mind for me is Chet Holmgren. Now, Chet is on a better team. Don't get me wrong. Chet is also has the luxury of dealing with SGA, things of that nature. He's in a better situation, which I guess you would sit there and say would be a disadvantage, although I would say that Victor has the better coach. But that doesn't necessarily mean anything, because the Rookie of the Year is an individual award. And that also gets kind of misconstrued, or some things get factored in when you look at how their team produced with them. And one could make the argument that Chet Holmgren's team is producing with him. What makes me say that? Well, let's look at it like this. Chet Holmgren right now, again, averages 17.9 points. So he's averaging about 18 points. Let's just give him the 0.1. On 55% shooting, he's about 7 rebounds a game, but now he's averaging close to 3 assists a game. Again, 2 more than Victor. Now, those numbers are not necessarily better than Victor. Victor averages 19.4. He's about 18. Victor averages a true double-double. He's slightly under. However, he's on a team where he actually has to compete for his minutes. He's on a team where he actually has to compete. And that's the bad thing about this situation. Like, he's on a better team. And because he's on a better team, there's other people in that lineup that actually equate to that he has to contend with. And on the same note, they have a decent record. Now, no one has OKC winning the finals or anything like that. But they're not 7-31. Let me go ahead and check that before I sit here on this video and just cap this way. They're not 7-31. They're second in the Western Conference. They're 27-11. They not only have a chance to actually be a playoff team, they're definitively going to be a playoff team if they continue this trajectory, but they have a good opportunity to actually go much further. And this now puts you in that conversation of, now who do you give the nod to, simply because not only is he available, he's on a better team. He's averaging just as many minutes. They both average under 30 minutes. Actually, right now, it seems as if Victor Wembanyama actually averages a minute more than Chet Holmgren. But there's no one that competes with Victor at his position, whereas there's people on this team that's already has a bunch of young guys that developed and things of that nature that Chet Holmgren has to contend with. Now, I'm not here to say that Victor is not Chet rather is a better player than Victor. I'm not here to say that. What I am here to say is that because of the way that things have worked out, because of their situation, Victor actually should be averaging what he's averaged. He should have better statistics because there's no one that can compete with him on his team or what he does. Whereas Chet has to go through the pecking order. He's not the number one guy. We know that that's SGA. But for him to still average Victor numbers, averaging around the same amount of minutes, means that he's also just as impactful and is actually equating to more wins. if you factor it all in, there could be a situation where even if it comes down to the wire, even as enthralled as we are with Victor Wembanyama, would he actually be the real rookie of the year? And that's a tough question to answer. It takes me back to the Carmelo and LeBron situation. LeBron won Rookie of the Year, but Carmelo literally had won everything. I think he had won Player of the Month or Rookie of the Month every month leading up until that point. He also got to the playoffs, which ironically is a very similar situation that Chet Holmgren finds himself in. While he may not be the offensive player, may not have all those monthly awards, statistically, he is not only on par, he's in a situation where, again, he has to fight for his tick, but they may actually make the playoffs. It actually means something. People forget LeBron didn't make the playoffs his first 2 seasons in the league. And I'm not saying he should have. This is not one of those videos. But Carmelo did. And Melo did it immediately. Off the cuff. He should have won Rookie of the Year. I think this is going to be an interesting development if this is what happens with Chet Holmgren and Victor Wembanyama. Now, I think overall, Victor is going to be improved to be a much better talent. I'm not going to say much better. I'm just going to say better. It's going to prove to be a better talent. However, I don't think the gap between what Chet can do and what Victor can do is going to be so wide that we can't have these conversations. I do think there's going to be levels to it, but I don't think that there's going to be this huge Grand Canyon of a gap between the two that we can't sit there and say, hey, what about Chet in this conversation? But I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear whether or not you think Victor, almost had a stroke. Victor Wembanyama could be and is the Rookie of the Year. I want to hear your thoughts on what you think it should be if Chet Holmgren is close, but they have a winning record and he makes the playoffs. Again, if it's just a marginal difference, do you give him the nod considering his situation? I want to hear all that and more in the comments. I'll be in there with you. Till next time. Peace.